I got this call, what was that, Tuesday. He says, I think we've still got one more video. And that's what I thought that last, well, I was getting people to double up, but I kept checking that, and it looked like it was right. Sure enough, when we started last week, and I saw, human chain, that's 6, wonder why they didn't.
His videos seem to go ahead, or
Huh?
his videos were kind of ahead of the
Yeah,
other stuff.
yeah, they do, and this, Here is Life, which is that chapter, was just really, I thought, strong as he talked about different people, ones that we will see in the video, and then we are going to see this is more movie time today, we're going to see a second video, because a conference that Joan and I are going to go to in April, the one I went to last year, Ecumenical Advocacy Conference. One of the people speaking there will be one of our co-moderators of the Presbyterian Church, and she had just gone to the border and did an interview there and talked some about that. I think you'll enjoy seeing that one as well. Here is Life really is a great summary of what Kent, I got his name right this time, how about that? I called him Carl or Kent. No telling what last time. I was praying. Whoever that was I prayed for, I hope they did well too. Because I didn't give the right name. In this chapter, he gave a number of, and we will see those in the video, a number of different people that he met. Ones that we've heard about back in some other chapters. Just amazing. These folks, even though they have been driven from their country, they still are welcoming people as they in refugee camps and other things like that. And I think that was just we'll watch the video and then I'll maybe do a little summary of that chapter, and then we'll go in to see the video from it actually was from that showing she would be coming to that conference, but it included the other video, which is also, if you'd like to, you'll see it now, but if you'd like to review it, and there's a lot of good things come off of our Presbyterian Church. PCUSA websites and other things like that, they put out things daily almost, but they're very interesting. So why don't we just open with prayer, and then we'll go to this video. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for opening our eyes over the last number of weeks as we see and hear directly from people who have migrated, immigrated to different countries, often for temporary shelter, for violence in their countries, and wanting to get to a country that is peaceable. In many cases, they also are in horrendous situations with war and murders and other things like that. We ask that you will particularly be with them, be with us as we watch this, and open our hearts to what we see. In Christ's name, amen.
Welcome to this last session together, the session on Here is Life. And where this phrase came from for me is when I was in northern Uganda, again, working on this book and understanding what's happening and how are people receiving refugees or not receiving refugees and welcoming them around the world. And I was in northern Uganda and was with one group and thought they were doing great work and really appreciated what they were doing. It was a northern Ugandan group, a local group. And they said their organization name was Here is Life. I thought, oh wow, I've heard the name of thousands of organizations in my life, and this might be my favorite one ever. So I asked more and spent more time with them. Here is Life was a group of Ugandans who had to flee as refugees themselves. They knew that experience, and then they eventually came back and established this organization saying, oh, we want life to be here. We know what there's like to be gone, but we want life to be here for us, but also for life to be here for other people who go through similar circumstances. So here is life, they were saying, and here is life, they were saying to people who had had to flee their lives in another country, people like Joseph and people like those 3 orphans he was caring for. Here is life. These are some of the children I met when I was with Here is Life, and some of the kids who they were helping to take care of. And it was beautiful to see them welcoming their neighbors, even as they had been welcomed when they'd had to flee and be refugees themselves. Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt, it says in Exodus 22. And I think Here is Life was living that out. They were remembering, for you were foreigners in Egypt. They were remembering their past and seeing how that compelled them, as God was compelling Israel, compelled them to be welcoming, remembering their past, and letting that transform them into people who welcome. I think that's an opportunity for us, isn't it, too, to think about how we've been welcomed in our lives, who's reached out for us. Of course, God, but also in our own lives, the generosity, the compassion, these moments of help in our lives. Let's remember that, and remember that we can take those experiences and those memories and help them, and those can help to compel us to be welcoming for others, especially those who have lost everything and had to leave everything. One of the examples of what inspired me in this was when I was there in Uganda and went to one of these churches. I was at a refugee camp and talking with some refugees, and they were talking about how life was so hard, but they're also talking about where life was good. And at one point they said, oh, do you want to see our church? Yeah, of course I said yes, and I wanted to see their church, and so they invited me to go along with them, and we walked together, and they showed me this church that they built together. You can see how rough it is, and the rough dirt floor, and these pews that they would sit on, and a ceiling and a roof made out of tarps. I just thought, wow, here are people who've had to leave everything behind, but they're saying, here is life, and here's our life with God. And I think that should inspire you, and inspires me to think about how we can be welcoming and in partnership, in good partnership, with people who are saying life is here and we're being faithful, and we can have a chance to reach out and help them as well. I have a friend named Gustav who's been here for 8 years, and he's lived in the country, and he came here legally, but now his legal status, because of changing immigration laws and laws around foreigners here, it's all uncertain. So he and his family are just living in this uncertainty when they've been good citizens. And he called me not too long ago and told me how he won Employee of the Year award, and he got a special reward from his employee, but now he's not even sure he'll be able to stay with this employer anymore because of his legal status. There's a way for us to have legal approach and good laws, but also to be thinking compassionately and wisely about people who are here with us and people who are on the other side of the world. There's a story not too long ago as well that I read about something that happened in Fairfax County, in one of these flare-ups in our country of rhetoric about foreigners, and some people had broken into their home, into this family's home, and scrawled, "Go back home, you're not welcome here." They felt so profoundly unwelcome. And they talked to this family of foreigners who had moved to the U.S. They talked about how they had felt welcomed in their community, and suddenly the whole community became unwelcoming, and the country felt unwelcoming. Well, it was beautiful as the neighbors. So that happened for someone who broke in, but then the neighbors said, no, that's not the kind of community we want to be. We want to be a community of welcoming. They gathered and they helped out their children, and they raised money to help out, and they suddenly transformed this community of being not welcoming for this family to more welcoming than it had ever been. Here is life, they were saying to this family. The Bible is a story of wandering, of homelessness, of seeking, of being immigrants and refugees in strange lands, searching for home. We're all working for hope. We're all working for home. We're all seeking for God to say, here is life, and help us to live better lives. And part of that can be in the way that we welcome. To say, here is life for you, and here's life for someone else, because all of our lives are lives in God. Back in the very first session, I told you the story about my son, and the question that he asked is really, our starting point and also our ending point. And in between, we want to wrestle with serious concerns. We want to address issues. We want to think about how to be practical. We want to form a human chain. We want to help people across that end line after running a marathon, help them to keep going as they resettle. But again, are we for them or against them? I think we need to be for them, then we work out the details in a wise way. But are we for them or against them? Well, we're for them because God welcomes us, that we may welcome others. And when we do that, we're invited into a beautiful life, the life of God. So as we finish this last session together, let me just read this as a sort of blessing for you as you go into discussion in your group, and then as you go out from this session into your life, a life of welcoming and being wise and being a group together who seeks to follow Jesus. Here is life in overcoming real concerns and fear with truth and love. Here is life in the aftermath of loss, violence, suffering, and walking away from home for days. Here is life and then working tenaciously for hope and home. Here's life because God so welcomes us that we welcome each other. Here's life because when we welcome strangers, we welcome the life giver. Here's life because God's kingdom keeps coming on earth as in heaven. Here's life when you are very welcomed. Here is life when you are very welcoming. And here's a life of love, worth living and worth living together. May we keep moving forward into a good life, a life of welcoming, a life in God's grace.
He showed us some things just in that video, both abroad and unfortunately in Fairfax County, Virginia, how the difference in do we welcome them, yes or no. We certainly have been welcomed in many places, in many ways, whether it's coming to church or whether it's in community. We've also seen some of this similar hate, unfortunately, in our country. You're ready when I am?
Yep, I'm ready
Okay.
whenever you are.
Okay,
Go for it.
because I'm not gonna, so much of this, he covers right there in that film, and then ends with that great, the verses which he did there. He talked at the very end of the book, which I took back from you last week, so you can't look at. Oh, you said that's fine.
I'm turning mine in.
You held on to it. That's fine. Which you're welcome to do if that's what you like. He talked about the different places as he went across different parts. One afternoon in Jordan, I took a taxi 45 minutes from Amman to Mount Nebo, where it's thought that Moses stood and looked over the promised land. This is a place of unquieted longing for his new home. He looked, of course, but never made it. He knew that ahead of time. After 40 years of searching and longing, he gazed at what would finally become home. His people would make it. He wouldn't set foot in that land. But the Bible story of liberation, yes, but also of wandering, of homelessness, of seeking, of being immigrants and refugees in strange lands searching for home. Where I stood, the Dead Sea was off to the left, to the right. Across the plains were shades of brown and patches of green. Bethlehem lay in the distance. It was a deeply moving to stand where Moses stood and see where Jesus was born, to look at land that Jesus had fled across as a refugee for safety. It was quiet. A bird soared above the mount of the promised land. I was mesmerized by Mount Nebo. Only a few other visitors came and went. The monastery and the church stood on the mountaintop. They erected a monument to Moses and to Jesus on that spot. Jesus' cross is wrapped in a serpent that Moses put up and held for the people in the desert. The work of finding home doesn't shy from sacrifice and suffering or the profound need of healing. This is Palestine, where my family is from, said the taxi driver, pointing across the promised land. After I got back in the car, he said that after I got back in the car. They came to Jordan in 1947, but our homes are over there. I thought this was really poignant, this last phrase this taxi driver says to him. We came in 1947, but our home is over there. My father still has a key, but a Jewish family now lives there. So that's that push into the West Bank and other things like that. So here we have someone who's a taxi driver right there. But it's even going to their own work or going to their own land in many cases. The Palestinians, and again, that's another whole issue to look at and review at some point, but it talks about how even to go to land that they do own, they still have to have passes and they have to get permission, they have to cross to get to their own land that was taken away during that 6-Day War. That Joel and I talk about that often because the day we left the big city of Due West, moving to Mobile, she was in one car. I had borrowed one of Daddy's cars, bigger that I could hook a trailer to, and we put everything we had in that trailer. And about the time we hit Atlanta, all the radio stations started breaking in. June 6th was the day we moved. And that really sticks in my mind, of course, because from there on to Mobile, that's all you heard was what was happening in the beginning of the war, where the Palestinians were and the Israelis were fighting, and unfortunately they still are. Again, the next thing we will see is this from this Val-Marie, you will see in a moment. Very short. Grew up, was born in Puerto Rico, came to the United States, and has become one of the strong Presbyterian leaders as a layperson. And she joined with a minister who is actually a synod exec that actually covers part of Massachusetts and the state of Maine. The presbytery is there. So she is works with 2 presbyteries up in there, and she is the minister, I need to say ordained minister, so it's ordained minister and an elder. And you will see again from her how strong she is and how lucky we are to have somebody like that. There were 6 great people that we had to vote on in pairs, and all of them were strong, but this is the pair that I voted for, and I think they are doing a good job now. Ready, set, go!
I think that I'm taken aback by the amount of faith that these people have as they move on. Yesterday we had the opportunity of crossing the border and being in Matamoros, and as we were walking around the area where there was an encampment with people that were waiting in line to be tended by the immigration authorities there in Mexico to seek the asylum. One of the ladies there we made a circle, we prayed for them, and when I asked her, well, I hear that you have been receiving help, some kind of help, that you have received some food, etc., from volunteers that have come to this encampment to help. And she said, yes, but I have everything that I need. What I need is prayer. And in my mind, I was thinking, this person has nothing. She has fled her country. She is a grandmother. Her grandchildren are here with her. She has nothing, and that's why she's here, looking for a better place to live, looking for a safe, secure place to be. And she tells me, I have everything. What I need is prayer. So in my heart, prayers are not enough. So our call is to look for ways to help, to be informed, to look for the correct information, to talk about the possibilities, to organize, to see how, in what other ways we can help.
You're standing in an area where folks didn't make it, unmarked graves. What is the significance of being where we are right now to you as a Presbyterian?
This is very humbling. It's very humbling because for somebody to be so very desperate, to get on a journey to a place where they feel will be of welcome, to a place where they feel they can flee the cartel, where they can flee persecution, where they can flee a regime, which is the case of many that are coming here as well, and not make it. Die along the way in anonymity, without the basic warmth of family. I cannot even imagine. My dad passed away 2 years ago, surrounded by his family. Many of the people that are crossing, these are family units. These are dads, these are moms with their children, to just die along the way. What does it say of us as Christians? That we did not tend a helping hand because of the policies, or because of our loss. We need to do better. We need to be church. My call to the church is, don't stay with just one piece of information. Get informed, get involved, know what is really happening, and look for ways to be the neighbor of those who are in need.
That you remember when I went to the border, I experienced just
well, we did. What we're seeing today is a dad and both through the process of
that is one that followed on another interview, I think. I saw exactly what you saw. We arrived on a Friday in Douglas, Arizona, and actually, as you remember, we lived in Agua Prieta, Mexico, right across the border there. On Saturday morning, we went to First Presbyterian Church of Douglas for a breakfast provided by some of the people from that church, and had an opportunity to meet with an elder of that church who was also a Border Patrol officer. He asked us not to talk too much about that visit while we were there, because he was not sure how his captain would react. He's welcome. I mean, they're welcome to share their thoughts and that type of thing. but in many cases he's the one that first told us that when administration changed, that they met in their group, and I forgot the number of station captains that are along that border, but how they sent forward requests for the new budget and what it might include for the Border Patrol, particularly there. And almost every one of them, matter of fact, he said he was not sure that it wasn't every one of them, but it was, they came together and it was clear that what they wanted was the electronics. And the nearest is Fort Huachuca, is where they have helicopters that are used, but that's all there. Those folks are there and training and doing other things like that, so very seldom when they think they would like to have a helicopter fly over to help them, they're not able to get it. And if it does, it takes about 35-40 minutes for the helicopter to arrive. So they were hoping for those kinds of things, and unfortunately we also saw some of the, again, the same things that Bob Marie saw there. The next morning we walked with a couple who are Mennonite couple that live about 3 blocks, and they walk every day down to the border and have a prayer and take different people with them. But then right adjoining that, about 2 blocks from where they live, we then walked over and saw exactly what she saw. And it was not a cemetery, and buried there were other people. I mean, there's some massive granite memorials and places marking different people, but intermixed with that all over would be small cross that you saw in that picture, something that this Mennonite group and others have done, at least to identify, or at least to mark with a very, stood up just a fraction, about this high, slanted, with a little plaque that would say, unknown male, unknown female child, unknown, so forth. They do have, very fortunate in Tucson is where some of the pathologists or medical examiners, things like that, and they, in many cases, can get enough from DNA or whatever may be available and can help identify, but in many cases there's not enough to be able to identify, and that's where these folks, some did have names, some had not, but that group. And then that Wednesday night, I guess, yeah, because it wasn't the night before we left, we joined in a weekly could call it a march, but it was a weekly, I think, where they have 780 at that point, so I'm sure it's well over 800 or more, of people who have died, who do know their names, or in some cases unknown. And they had crosses, those same white crosses you saw there, but they had all 780 of them. And there were probably 75, 80 people there, so you rotated, you would pick up a cross, and we laid them all down over a 3.5 block area, going right to, right up to the border at the port of entry there, and you would pick up a cross and call out that person's name, and then lay it right on the curb as we went. So they would, you go back and get the next cross and go to the end while you, and named each one of those people. They do that every week there. But unfortunately, what that shows, and that's that's only about a 15-mile front, and that's 780 that they are aware of. There are plenty others, I'm sure, that they've not only not identified, they have been found, determined by how far away they are. So that part, particularly with Val-Marie showing us that, just brings back deep remembrances of that. We'll make other decisions about what we're going to do, but as she said, and gave that example of the lady that said, no, our needs are being met. We're waiting to try to come into the country and do it the right way, but we just need prayer. And so if we don't do anything else, if we think about those people, those families that are broken up in many cases and have lost members there, her comments were that we need, as a church and as Christians, to at least deeply consider what we saw there on that video and what we've had over this course through the whole time. I look forward to seeing and hearing her again, and I understand that Cindy Coleman, who is the minister, will be at this same conference as well, so both of them. There are probably 1,000 people will be at this conference, and they're from every denomination that you can imagine, including Hindu, Muslim, majority Christian there, just because it's in Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, I'm sure. But continue to pray for our church and for our denomination as we address these issues that they've brought. And I thought my dog had showed up. Looks like opportunity right there.
They're very cute, but they wouldn't go with a female on the side.
Just like my dog.
Can I make just a couple of thoughts?
Yeah.
That through the whole thing.
I'm talking too much.
He mentioned early on in some of the sessions, and probably two of the pictures that had most stood out to me about some of the refugee situations is the little boy who was on the beach who had drowned and his little body laying there. And then the little boy in the back of the ambulance.
Yeah, yeah.
Those hit me because at the time all I could think of was my two nephews. And they were about that age at one point, and how hard it must have been for that family to make a decision to try to escape. And in the end, they possibly lost everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was no chance of life to stay where they were at either. Sorry.
Yeah.
Those really,
No.
that hits me when I see children and people trying to have a life and to live, just live. I also have the benefit and a blessing of working in a school where I see families come from all different backgrounds. And this has been not just at my current school, but even in the past in Texas, from countries I didn't even really even know existed. But having an opportunity to come here, and the large majority of them were fleeing or looking for something better that they couldn't get. I think of a daughter and her mom who fled Pakistan with the help of her uncles to escape an abusive marriage where they just had no chance to live had they stayed there, and her uncles helped get them out of there.
No protection of the law.
No, exactly. I think of families that have come up from south of our border. I think of families that have come over from India. And just everywhere. And then I look out, like if I look in our cafeteria at school, and even last night when Eric and I were at the theater, I was just looking around and there was so much diversity. And these children have made friendships. We're taught inclusion, we're taught openness and welcoming as well. And given an opportunity, they all come together. They're all friends. They go to the movies together. They sit at lunch together with each other. They won't see the barriers of color, race, ethnicity,
Not at
religion,
all. That's
unless they're taught that.
not unless they've learned it
Correct.
by someone telling them
And
you're not supposed to be
Of
playing
all-
with that child that's sitting in the
I've never encountered a family, student or parent, that did not appreciate beyond measure what we have to offer and how grateful they are to be here. And they're giving back. They are. That was just mine. That's been the whole thing. That's
no,
kind of
we,
things
I
I've
did,
thought about
you needn't
all along.
worry about choking up. When we also told y'all of where we went, we were already in Mexico, of course, but they have a landowner that must own hundreds of acres because of cattle. Put it this way, you see how many cows will be on a field here. They have so much land and so many cattle on those that they try to put the number of cows where each one will have 60 acres to run per cow.
Wow.
But of course they don't. They still cluster up, as you can imagine, herds there. But that's how big that land and how desolate at the same time that land is. And we walked probably 5 miles in from his, can't count a farm, that's a ranch, I guess. Yeah.
To give you an idea of a measure, the grounds at West Pelzer School occupies West Pelzer Elementary. That's 50 acres. So think 10 more acres than that for each cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of grazing.
Yeah. And they're not allowed to graze on it. I mean, it was rough. But we saw the same thing when I think I've still got it at home. I brought it that first day. It was
The shoe.
shoe of a probably 1.5 or 2 year old. And things that you find out there. This same group, Frontera de Cristo, and that group and others had 55-gallon drums that they tried to keep full of water under. Every once in a while you'd find a small tree and they would have them up under there, and you could see where people gathered their cans and water bottles, empty water bottles and things like that as you walked through that particular area. But and then that was probably that morning, and that night was the night we went and held the crosses and thought about all of the people that had died trying to get to freedom at that point. And hopefully we found an asylum. We'll continue to see where that goes. The land of the free and the home of the brave. And we've got to provide that freedom to people who are children of God just like we are. Let's close. Heavenly Father, we've felt intense moments as we've done this study. We see and hear on daily, hourly, every minute basis almost now the various thoughts that go through the minds of people in our country. We ask that we indeed may do as the book is titled, You Welcome Us, that you will continue to bless that work and the continued work that Kent is doing in his work at Wheaton and bringing others along as he travels all over the world and brings back visions that we can feel and hear and see, stories that he had, and remind us indeed that Jesus was a refugee and an alien, had died so that we might live. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.